They looked at her uniform, then at her face, and laughed. "The cleaning crew enters through the back, sweetheart," the captain sneered, blocking the cockpit door with his arm. He didn't know that the woman standing before him wasn't just a pilot. She was the newly appointed chief of operations for the entire region, specifically sent to investigate rumors of corruption at this very airline. Captain Nia Reynolds didn't scream. She didn't fight. She simply stepped back, pulled out her radio, and uttered 5 words that froze the blood in his veins. "Ground everything. Revoke his clearance." What happened next wasn't just justice. It was a masterclass in karma that exposed a scandal so deep it threatened to bankrupt the entire company. You are not going to believe what they found in the cargo hold. The fluorescent lights of JFK's Terminal 4 hummed with the chaotic energy of the holiday rush. Thousands of passengers were scrambling, dragging overstuffed carry-ons, checking watches, and praying for upgrades that would never come. Amidst the sea of weary travelers, Captain Nia Reynolds moved with the precision of a woman who lived her life by a flight plan. She wasn't in full uniform today, just her crisp white pilot's shirt with the epaulets removed, dark navy trousers, and a lanyard tucked discreetly into her breast pocket. She looked young. Too young, some would say, to be flying a Boeing 737. At 34, Nia was an anomaly in an industry dominated by grey hair and deep voices. She was black, standing 5'6", with her hair pulled back in a neat professional bun, her face bare of makeup, but sharp with intelligence. To the casual observer, she might have looked like a flight attendant off duty, or perhaps a gate agent rushing to a shift. But Nia Reynolds was neither. She was a senior Czech airman, and as of 48 hours ago, the acting regional director of safety for Sovereign Air. It was a promotion she hadn't announced yet. In fact, nobody at JFK knew. That was the point. Sovereign Air Flight 492 to London Heathrow was her target. For months, anonymous reports had been trickling into the FAA and Sovereign's corporate headquarters in Atlanta. Maintenance logs were being penciled-whipped, signed off without inspection. Crew rest times were being ignored. Weight and balance sheets were being fudged to squeeze in extra cargo. And at the center of the complaints was a name that carried a lot of weight in the industry, Captain Arthur Vance. Vance was a legend, or at least he thought he was. A 30-year veteran with a spotless record on paper and a reputation for terrorizing his co-pilots in reality. He was untouchable. He was the golden boy of the old guard. Nia approached gate B32. The boarding process hadn't started yet, but the crew was already on board for pre-flight checks. This was the critical window. She needed to observe the cockpit culture before the passengers arrived. She needed to see if Vance actually ran through the checklists, or if, as the rumors suggested, he just kicked the tires and lit the fires. She bypassed the long line of passengers waiting at the podium and walked up to the jet bridge door. The gate agent, a harried-looking woman named Brenda, with frizzy hair and a badge that was flipped backward, didn't even look up from her computer. "Excuse me," Nia said, her voice calm but projecting authority. "I need access to the jet bridge. Flight 492. Brenda kept typing. "Boarding hasn't started, ma'am. Zone 1 will be called in 10 minutes. Please step back behind the red line." "I'm not a passenger," Nia said, reaching for the ID tucked in her pocket. "I'm crew. I need to speak with Captain Vance immediately." Brenda finally looked up. Her eyes scanned Nia from top to bottom, lingering on the lack of a blazer and the missing epaulets. A look of dismissal, quick and cold, washed over her face. "Crew!" Brenda scoffed a dry, humorless sound. "Honey, the flight attendants are already on board, and they wear skirts and scarves. You look like you're lost. Check your ticket again. Economy boarding is in Zone 4. Naya felt the familiar prickle of irritation, the heat rising up the back of her neck. She had dealt with this her entire career. The assumption that she didn't belong. The assumption that she was the help, not the boss. "I am a pilot, Brenda," Nia said, reading the name tag that had flipped over. She pulled her Sovereign Air credentials out. "Captain Nia Reynolds, I'm deadheading on this flight to conduct a line check. Now open the door." Brenda squinted at the ID, but she didn't touch the keypad to unlock the door. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "That ID looks old. We've had new badges issued since October, and I don't have any notification about a deadhead or a line check on my manifest. Captain Vance hates surprises." "It's a surprise inspection," Nia said, her patience thinning. "That's the nature of the job. If you don't open this door, you are interfering with a federal safety audit. Do you want that on your record?" Brenda hesitated. The mention of federal usually spooked them. But just as she was about to reach for the phone to call the aircraft, the door to the jet bridge swung open from the inside. A man stepped out. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair perfectly coiffed and a jawline that had probably sold 1,000 tickets in the 80s. He wore the 4 stripes of a captain on his shoulders, his double-breasted blazer buttoned tight. Captain Arthur Vance. He held a coffee cup in one hand and a flight manifest in the other. He looked at Brenda, then down at Nia. He didn't see a colleague. He didn't see a superior. "What's the hold-up, Brenda?" Vance boomed, his voice a deep baritone that demanded attention. "I need the final load sheet. Why is there a passenger blocking the lane?" "She says she's a pilot captain," Brenda said, rolling her eyes, relieved to pass the buck. "Says she's here for a line check." Vance turned his full attention to Nia. He looked at her sensible shoes, her plain trousers, her face. He smirked. It was a nasty, condescending expression that made Nia's skin crawl. "A pilot," Vance chuckled, shaking his head. "Sweetheart, the pilot's lounge is in the main terminal. This is a restricted area, and I certainly didn't request a jump-seater, especially not one who looks like she should be serving peanuts or mopping the aisle." The air around them seemed to freeze. Several passengers nearby stopped talking, sensing the tension. Nia straightened her spine. "Captain Vance, I am Captain Nia Reynolds. I am here on behalf of corporate operations to observe this flight leg. Here are my credentials." She held the badge out again. Vance didn't even look at it. He swatted her hand away, not aggressively, but with a dismissive flick as if she were a fly. "I don't care if you have a note from the Pope," Vance said, stepping closer, towering over her. "This is my ship. I don't know who you slept with to get a fake badge or what affirmative action program let you think you could walk onto my flight deck, but it's not happening. I run a tight ship, no distractions, no amateurs." "Amateur," Nia repeated, her voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly quiet. "Captain, I suggest you look at the ID. I am a senior Czech airman." "And I," Vance interrupted, pointing a finger in her face, "am the senior captain of this base. I have flown more miles in reverse than you have flown forward. Now get out of my gate area before I have security drag you out for impersonating a crew member." He turned back to Brenda. "If she's not gone in 30 seconds, call the airport police. I want her arrested." Vance turned on his heel and walked back into the jet bridge, the heavy steel door slamming shut behind him with a finality that echoed through the terminal. Nia stood there, the humiliation burning hot on her face as passengers whispered and pointed. Brenda smirked, picking up the phone. "You heard the captain. Move along or you're going to jail." Nia looked at the closed door. She looked at Brenda. Then she looked at the date on her watch. December 24th, Christmas Eve. Okay, Arthur. She thought, a cold calm settling over her. You want to play the authority card? Let's see who's holding the ace. She didn't leave. She didn't argue with Brenda. She walked 10 feet away near the large glass windows overlooking the tarmac where the massive Boeing 707 sat waiting. She pulled out her phone not to call her mum or a lawyer, but to dial a direct encrypted line to the Sovereign Air Operation Control Center, OCC, in Atlanta. Dispatch, a voice answered instantly. This is Director Reynolds. Authorization code Alpha Tango 90. Director Reynolds. The dispatcher's voice shifted instantly from bored to alert. We weren't expecting a call. Is everything all right? No, Naya said, staring at the plane through the glass. Flag Flight 492. Mark it as grounded immediately. Revoke the pilot in command's clearance effective now. And send a ground crew to block the pushback tug. Nobody leaves this gate. The reaction from the Operation Control Center was immediate but confused. Director, did you say? Ground 492. The dispatcher, a man named Steve, who had worked with Naya for years, sounded hesitant. That's the London Heavy. It's fully booked. It's Christmas Eve. If we cancel that flight, we are displacing 300 passengers. The cost alone will be... I know the cost, Steve. Naya cut him off. Her eyes fixed on the cockpit window of the 707, where she could see Vance moving around, oblivious to the storm brewing above his head. The cost of a hull loss is higher. I have reason to believe the pilot in command is emotionally compromised and violating sterile cockpit protocols. Furthermore, I was just denied access to perform a federally mandated safety audit. That is an automatic grounding offense. Do it. Copy that, Director. Grounding 492. Naya hung up. She wasn't done. She dialed a second number. This one was to the Airport Port Authority Police, but not the general line. She called the shift commander, Lieutenant Miller, a man she had briefed just yesterday, regarding the potential investigation. Miller, he answered. It's Reynolds. I'm at gate B32. I need a unit here. Not to arrest a passenger, but to escort a pilot off an aircraft. Vance, Miller asked. He knew the target. Vance, Nia confirmed. He just threatened me with arrest for trying to do my job. He refused a safety check. I've grounded the plane. He's going to try to leave anyway. I need you to make sure he doesn't. We're on our way. 2 minutes. Nia put the phone away and turned back to the podium. Brenda was busy typing, likely issuing the boarding pass for the first passenger. The Now Boarding sign flashed on the screen above the desk. Zone 1 First Class and Diamond members, we are now inviting you to board Flight 492. Brenda announced over the PA system, her voice sickly sweet. A crowd of wealthy travelers in expensive coats surged forward. Naya stepped back into the lane, blocking the path to the jet bridge door. Boarding is cancelled, Naya announced, her voice loud and clear, cutting through the terminal chatter. The passengers stopped confused. A murmur of annoyance rippled through the crowd. Excuse me, a man in a cashmere coat snapped. Who are you? Brenda stood up, her face turning red. Security. I'm calling security. You are disrupting a flight. I am security, Naya said, pulling out her badge again, but this time she flipped it open to reveal the gold shield of a federal flight deck officer, a deputized status many pilots carried alongside her director credentials. I am Captain Naya Reynolds, Regional Director of Operations. This aircraft has been grounded by my order. No one boards. Brenda froze. The word director finally registered. Her eyes widened, flicking from Nia's face to the badge. The color drained from her cheeks. Suddenly the phone on Brenda's desk rang, a shrill, demanding sound. Then the printer started spitting out a paper automatically. Brenda picked up the phone, her hand shaking. Gate B32? Yes. Yes, dispatch. What? But we're boarding. Okay. Okay. She hung up the phone slowly. She looked at Naya with a mixture of fear and disbelief. They red flagged the flight, Brenda whispered. The computer just locked me out. I can't scan tickets. I told you, Naya said calmly. Now get on the PA. Tell the passengers there is a technical delay. Do not tell them it is a crew issue yet. I don't want a riot. Before Brenda could speak, the jet bridge door flew open again. Captain Vance stormed out, his face a mask of fury. He had seen the ground stop message flash on his cockpit flight management computer. Who the hell authorized a stop? Vance roared, ignoring the passengers staring at him. He zeroed in on Brenda. Why is my computer telling me dispatch pulled the release? Fix it. I can't, Captain, Brenda stammered, shrinking back. It wasn't Brenda, Naya said, stepping into Vance's line of sight. It was me. Vance turned on her, his eyes bulging. You little... I told you to get lost. You think you can call in a prank to dispatch and stop my flight? Do you have any idea who I am? I play golf with the CEO. And I sign the CEO's safety compliance reports, Naya countered, holding her ground. She was half his size, but she possessed a gravity he couldn't comprehend. You denied a federally mandated check ride. You exhibited aggression and unprofessional behavior. And judging by your dilated pupils and the slight tremor in your hand, I have probable cause to request a toxicity screen right now. That was a bluff, mostly. But Vance flinched. It was subtle, a tiny twitch of the eye, but Naya saw it. You're insane, Vance spat. I'm taking this bird up. Get out of my way. He moved to shove past her back toward the jet bridge. He was going to try and barricade himself in the cockpit. If he got the door closed, it would take a SWAT team to get him out. Don't do it, Arthur, Naya warned. Watch me, he sneered. He reached for the door handle. Police, step away from the door. The command came from behind the crowd. Lieutenant Miller and 3 uniformed officers pushed through the confused passengers. They weren't smiling. Vance froze his hand on the handle. He looked at the police, then back at Naya. For the first time, the arrogance cracked. He realized this wasn't just a gate agent dispute. This was real. Officer, Vance said, putting on his charming captain voice, smoothing his jacket. Thank God you're here. This woman is deranged. She's impersonating an official and interfering with a flight. Arrest her. Lieutenant Miller walked right past Naya and stopped in front of Vance. He looked the captain up and down. Captain Arthur Vance? Miller asked. Yes, and I want to press charges, Vance said, pointing at Nia. I'm afraid that's not how this works today, Captain, Miller said. He turned to Nia. Director Reynolds, is this the individual? That's him, Naya said. He is relieved of duty. Please escort him off the secure area and to the testing facility. I want a full panel. Alcohol and narcotics. Vance's jaw dropped. Director, her. Yes, sir, Miller said to Vance. Captain Reynolds is the regional director, and you are creating a disturbance. Hand over your badge. You can't do this, Vance screamed, his face turning purple. I have 30 years. I am sovereign heir. This is a conspiracy. Badge. Now. Miller commanded, his hand resting near his belt. Trembling with rage, Vance ripped his ID off his lapel and threw it on the floor. You'll regret this. All of you, I'll have your badges by morning." As the officers escorted a shouting Vance away from the gate, the terminal was dead silent. The passengers were stunned. Brenda, the gate agent, was trembling behind her podium, refusing to make eye contact with Naya. Naya picked up Vance's badge from the floor. She looked at the picture, a younger, smugger Vance. She walked over to the podium and keyed the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," Naya said, addressing the hundreds of stranded passengers. "My name is Captain Reynolds. I apologize for the disruption. We have had a crew scheduling issue. However, I am not cancelling this flight." She looked at the startled faces. "I am qualified on the 777. I am going to fly you to London myself. But first, we are going to do something that should have been done a long time ago. We are going to check this plane properly. Give us 1 hour." There was a pause and then a scattering of applause that grew into a cheer. Naya turned to Brenda. "Get the first officer out here. I need to talk to him." And Brenda, "Yes. Yes, Director," Brenda squeaked. "Print me the cargo manifest, the real one, not the one Vance signed." Naya had a feeling that Vance's aggression wasn't just about ego. He was hiding something. And now that she had the keys to the kingdom, she was going to find out what it was. The jet bridge felt like a tunnel between two worlds. Behind Nia lay the noise of the terminal, the angry whispers of passengers, the frantic typing of Brenda, the gate agent, and the receding shouts of Captain Vance. Ahead of her lay the sanctuary of the Boeing 707-300ER, a machine she respected more than most people. Naya stepped onto the aircraft. The lead flight attendant, a woman in her 50s, named Carol, with perfectly sprayed hair and eyes that had seen everything, was standing in the galley arms crossed, looking anxious. "Is it true?" Carol asked, her voice hushed. "Did you really have Vance hauled off?" Naya nodded once, maintaining her professional composure. "Captain Vance has been relieved of duty for a medical and safety evaluation. I am taking command of this aircraft. I need you to secure the cabin and prepare for a delay. We aren't going anywhere until I say this plane is safe." Carol let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for years. A small, genuine smile cracked her professional mask. "Honey, if you fired Arthur Vance, I'll serve you coffee on a silver platter. That man has been a nightmare since the 90s. "Coffee is fine, black," Nia said. "But first I need the cockpit." Nia turned left and entered the flight deck. The atmosphere inside was thick with tension. In the right seat sat the first officer, a young man named Jacob Sterling. He couldn't have been more than 26. He was staring straight ahead at the instrument panel, his hands gripping his knees so hard his knuckles were white. He didn't turn when Naya entered. He looked like a man waiting for the executioner. Naya didn't yell. She didn't storm in. She simply closed the cockpit door, locking out the noise of the cabin, and hung her jacket on the hook. She settled into the left seat, the captain's seat. It was still warm from Vance. The smell of his expensive, overpowering cologne lingered in the air, mixing with the scent of avionics and recirculated air. "First Officer Sterling," Naya said softly. Jacob flinched. He turned his head slowly, his eyes wide and terrified. "Director, I didn't know." "You didn't know I was a director? Or you didn't know you were signing off on an illegal aircraft?" Jacob swallowed hard. Captain Vance, he handles the load sheets. He told me to just input the flight path and check the weather. He said he takes care of the weight and balance, personally." Naya turned her chair to face him. "Jacob, look at me." He looked up. He was sweating despite the cool air conditioning. "You are a pilot, Naya said, her voice firm but not unkind. Not a secretary. If this plane goes down, gravity doesn't care if you were just following orders. Gravity kills you just the same. Now show me the numbers. She reached for the ACAR's aircraft communications, addressing and reporting system display. She pulled up the pre-flight data. 0 fuel weight, 385 pounds. Nia read aloud. Fuel on board 140,000 pounds. Takeoff weight calculated at 525,000 pounds. She looked at the runway performance data. Based on these numbers and the wet runway conditions outside, we have a safety margin of about 500 feet of runway. Tight but legal. Then she looked at the paper manifest that Vance had left crumpled in the center console cup holder. She smoothed it out. The numbers matched the computer. But something was wrong. Naya had an instinct for it. A spidey sense developed over 15 years of flying. She looked at the fuel burn logs from the previous leg of this aircraft's journey, inbound from Hong Kong. Jacob, Naya said, her eyes narrowing. This plane arrived 3 hours ago. It burned 12% more fuel on the inbound leg than the flight plan predicted. Did maintenance check for a fuel leak? Yes, ma'am, Jacob stammered. No leaks found. They said it was just headwinds. Headwinds don't account for a 12% discrepancy on a modern 777, Nia muttered. The only other reason an engine burns that much harder is if it's pushing more weight than the computer thinks it is. She tapped the screen. Vance manually entered the 0 fuel weight. He didn't use the uplink from the dispatch server. He always does that, Jacob whispered, looking at the door as if Vance might burst back in. He says the company computers are too conservative. He says he knows the real weights. Jacob, Naya said, her voice dropping to a whisper. If the computer says we weigh 525,000 pounds, but we actually weigh 550,000 pounds, and we try to take off on a wet runway with tonight's wind. Jacob's face went pale. He did the mental math. We wouldn't rotate. We'd run off the end of the runway. Exactly, Nia said. We would be a fireball in Jamaica Bay. She stood up abruptly. Don't touch anything. Don't let anyone in this cockpit. Where are you going? Jacob asked, his voice trembling. I'm going to find out what Arthur Vance is hiding in the belly of my airplane. The tarmac was bitterly cold. The wind off the bay whipped across the concrete, carrying the smell of jet fuel and exhaust. Naya had thrown a high-visibility vest over her clothes and marched down the stairs of the jet bridge to the ramp level, the chaotic underworld of the airport, where the bags were loaded and the fuel was pumped. She walked straight toward the tail of the massive Boeing 777. A team of ramp agents was busy loading the final containers into the aft cargo hold. They were moving fast, too fast, throwing bags with reckless abandon. Stop, Naya commanded, her voice cutting through the whine of the auxiliary power unit. Stop the belt loader. The ramp lead. A burly man named Mike Kowalski looked down from the belt loader. He wore a heavy parka and a beanie. He glared at her. Who are you? We got 10 minutes to push. We're late. I'm the captain, Naya shouted over the wind. And I'm the director of operations. Shut it down, Mike. Kowalski hesitated. He signaled to his guy to pause the belt. He climbed down, wiping grease on his pants. He towered over Nia, using his size to intimidate her. It was a tactic that worked on most people, not on Nia. Director, huh? Kowalski spat. Vance is the captain. He told us to get this bird loaded ASAP. Said he's got priority cargo in the forward hold that needs to get to London by morning. Priority cargo? Nia asked. Show me. Can't, Kowalski said, crossing his arms. Forward hold is sealed. Custom seal is already on it. I can't break a custom seal without a federal agent present. You know the rules." "I know the rules better than you do," Nia snapped. "And I know that a custom seal doesn't prevent a captain from inspecting their own aircraft for safety. Now you have two choices. One, you open that forward hold right now. Or two, I call the Port Authority police back down here, and this time they bring the drug dogs and the bomb squad. And if they find so much as a cigarette lighter that isn't on the manifest, you lose your Cedar badge and your pension. Today." Kowalski stared at her. He looked at the police cruiser that was still parked up by the terminal gate lights, flashing where they had taken Vance away. He realized she wasn't bluffing. "Fine," Kowalski grumbled. "But it's on you if the seal is broken." He walked to the control panel on the side of the fuselage and hit the switch. The hydraulic whine pierced the air as the massive forward cargo door slowly hinged upward, revealing the dark cavern of the cargo hold. Nia climbed up the belt loader and ducked inside. The hold was dimly lit, packed tight with aluminum cargo containers, LD-3 unit load devices. She pulled out the manifest she had taken from the cockpit. "According to this," Nia said, scanning the paper, "positions 11, 12, and 13 are supposed to be empty. Weight and balance says they are empty." She pointed her flashlight into the back of the hold. Positions 11, 12, and 13 were not empty. 3 massive pallets wrapped in black opaque plastic and netted down tight sat in the empty spots. They didn't have standard airline tracking tags. They had handwritten labels. "What is this, Mike?" Nia asked, her voice echoing in the metal tube. Kowalski was standing at the bottom of the loader, looking nervous now. "I don't know. Vance said it was company material. Spare parts for a plane in London. Said to just load it and forget it." "Spare parts don't get wrapped in black plastic," Nia said. She climbed over the first row of containers, squeezing through the gap to reach the mystery pallets. She took a pocket knife from her vest and slashed the black plastic on the first pallet. It wasn't airplane parts. Revealed under the plastic were stack upon stack of heavy-duty, industrial-grade wooden crates. They were marked with symbols that made Nia's blood run cold. Lithium-ion high capacity. Class 9, hazardous material. Do not load on passenger aircraft. But that wasn't all. The crates were heavy. Way too heavy for just batteries. The suspension on the pallet was compressed to the limit. Nia slashed the plastic on the second pallet. More crates. But one was cracked open slightly from being shoved into place. Nia shone her flashlight into the crack. It wasn't just batteries. Inside the crate, packed in foam, were vehicle parts. Not just any parts. She saw the distinctive carbon fiber weave of a luxury supercar chassis. And nestled between the car parts were clear vacuum-sealed bags filled with a silvery powder. Nia froze. She touched the powder with her gloved finger. It wasn't drugs. It was heavy, metallic. Rare earth metals. Palladium, rhodium, the stuff used in catalytic converters and high-tech electronics. Stolen, smuggled to avoid tariffs. It didn't matter. What mattered was the weight. "Mike!" Nia screamed, her voice shaking with rage. "Do you have a scale ticket for these?" "No," Mike said, his voice small. "Vance said. He said it was just foam and plastic. 500 pounds total." Nia kicked the crate. "This is raw metal and industrial batteries. This pallet alone weighs 5,000 pounds. There are 3 of them, that's 15,000 pounds of unmanifested cargo." The realization hit her like a physical blow. 15,000 pounds. That was the ghost weight. That was why the inbound flight burned so much fuel. Vance had been flying this plane effectively overloaded by 7 tons completely off the books. And the batteries, if one of those batteries had short-circuited during the flight, which happens when they are packed improperly and crushed under heavy metal parts, the fire would have been uncontainable. The Halon fire suppression system in the cargo hold is designed for luggage fires, not a thermal runaway of industrial lithium. They would have been over the Atlantic Ocean 3 hours from land in a burning coffin. Naya scrambled out of the hold, her heart pounding against her ribs. She jumped down from the loader and landed in front of Kowalski. "You loaded Class 9 hazmat next to high-density metal on a passenger flight," she hissed. "You nearly killed 300 people." I didn't know," Kowalski stammered, backing away. "Vance said he'd fire me if I asked questions. He said it was just a favor for a friend." "A favor." Nia pulled out her radio. She didn't call dispatch this time. She called the tower. "Kennedy Tower. This is Sovereign 492 Operations. I have an emergency on the ramp at Gate B32. I need fire rescue and the FBI immediately. We have a major hazmat violation and potential smuggling operation discovered on board." As the sirens began to wail in the distance, cutting through the cold night air, Naya looked up at the cockpit window. She imagined Vance sitting in there all those times, smiling, shaking hands with passengers, playing the hero. All while smuggling illegal cargo that turned his plane into a flying bomb. He wasn't just a bully. He was a criminal, and she had just caught him red-handed. But as the police cars swarmed the tarmac, Nia realized something else. Vance couldn't have done this alone. He needed people on the ground. He needed someone in the system to hide the paper trail. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a text message. "Unknown number. Walk away, Nia. You don't know who you're messing with. The plane flies, or your career ends tonight." Naya stared at the screen. The fear flared up for a second, hot and sharp. Then she looked at the plane. She looked at the passengers watching from the terminal windows. She typed a reply. "The plane is grounded, and I'm just getting started." She hit send. The flashing lights of the Port Authority police, the FBI, and the fire rescue units turned the night into a disorienting strobe effect of red, blue, and white. The tarmac at JFK, usually a place of organized chaos, was now a crime scene. Naya stood near the nose gear of the 787, her arms wrapped around herself against the biting wind. She wasn't cold. She was running on pure adrenaline. Lieutenant Miller was beside her, speaking into his shoulder radio, coordinating the perimeter. "We've got the cargo hold secured," Miller said, turning to Nia. "Bomb squad cleared the batteries, but the feds are freaking out about those car parts. Apparently those chassis numbers match a shipment of prototypes stolen from a facility in Stuttgart last month. High-value industrial espionage. We're talking $10 million in that hold alone." Naya nodded, her mind racing. It makes sense. High value, high density. Vance was running a smuggling mule service. He uses the airline's reputation to bypass scrutiny. Who checks the captain's personal load? Exactly, Miller said. But Director, you need to see this. He pointed toward the service road that ran along the perimeter fence. A sleek black Lincoln Navigator with tinted windows had just bypassed the police blockade and was speeding toward the aircraft. "Who is that?" Naya asked. "Not police," Miller said, his hand resting on his holster. The SUV screeched to a halt near the jet bridge stairs. The back door opened, and a man stepped out. He was wearing a cashmere overcoat that cost more than Nia's car a silk scarf, and Italian leather shoes that were immediately ruined by the oil-stained tarmac. Nia recognized him instantly. Marcus Thorne, the Vice President of Global Logistics for Sovereign Air. He was based in Manhattan, a corporate shark known for cutting costs and boosting stock prices. He was also Arthur Vance's direct superior in the organizational chart. Thorne didn't look happy. He walked straight toward Nia, ignoring the police tape. "Captain Reynolds," Thorne barked, his voice smooth but laced with venom. "What in God's name is going on here? I get a call that you've turned my flagship route into a circus." "Vice President Thorne," Nia said, stepping forward to meet him. She didn't extend her hand. "I'm conducting a safety audit that escalated into a criminal investigation. Captain Vance was attempting to fly an overloaded aircraft with undeclared hazardous materials." Thorne stopped a foot away from her. He towered over her, smelling of expensive scotch and cigars. He lowered his voice so the police wouldn't hear. "Nia, listen to me," Thorne said, his tone shifting to a patronizing purr. "You're new to the director role. You're eager. I get it. But you're making a mistake. That cargo, it's sensitive corporate assets. We were moving it quietly to avoid industrial competitors seeing it. It's not smuggling. It's strategy." "Strategy?" Nia raised an eyebrow. "Is it strategy to wrap lithium-ion batteries in black plastic and lie on a federal weight manifest? Is it strategy to risk the lives of 300 people for corporate assets?" Thorne's eyes narrowed. "You are blowing this out of proportion. I authorized that shipment. It was a special project. Now tell the police it was a clerical error. Tell them you misread the manifest. We'll pay the fine, Vance will take a slap on the wrist, and we all go home rich. If you don't—" He let the sentence hang in the air. "If I don't," Nia challenged. "If you don't," Thorne whispered, "then that text message you received 10 minutes ago will be the least of your worries. You think you're a hero. You're a diversity hire who got lucky. I can end your career with a phone call. I can make sure you never fly a crop duster again. I'll paint you as hysterical, incompetent, and insubordinate." Nia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. The text message, "Walk away." Thorne knew about it, which meant Thorne sent it, or ordered it. She looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the arrogance of a man who had never been told no. A man who thought safety regulations were suggestions for poor people. Nia smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile. "Mr. Thorne," she said loudly, ensuring Lieutenant Miller and the nearby FBI agent could hear. "Did you just admit to authorizing the loading of undeclared Class 9 dangerous goods on a passenger aircraft?" Thorne's face twitched. "I said, because," Nia continued, her voice projecting like she was making a cabin announcement, "under Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations, knowing and willful violation of hazmat transport laws carries a prison sentence of up to 10 years. And since you just admitted it was a special project you authorized, you've just confessed to conspiracy." Thorne stepped back, his face flushing red. "You little witch. You wouldn't dare." "Lieutenant Miller," Nia called out. Miller was there in a second, 2 FBI agents flanking him. "Did you get that?" Nia asked Miller. Miller tapped the body camera on his chest. "Audio and video clear as day, Director." Thorne looked at the camera, then at Nia. The color drained from his face. "This is a mistake," Thorne stammered, backing toward his SUV. "I need to call legal." "You can call them from the station," one of the FBI agents said, stepping forward. "Marcus Thorne, We have questions regarding the interstate transport of stolen automotive prototypes. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." Thorne froze. He looked at Naya with pure hatred. "You're dead, Reynolds. Sovereign Air will bury you. The board will protect me." "The board," Naya said calmly as the cuffs clicked around his wrists, "hates bad press, and I think Vice President arrested for smuggling on Christmas Eve is going to be very bad press." As they shoved Thorne into the back of a police cruiser, not his limo. Nia let out a long breath. She watched the lights fade into the distance. She had cut off the head of the snake, but she knew the body would still thrash. Thorne was right about one thing. The corporate machine would try to crush her to save itself. Her phone rang. It was the CEO of Sovereign Air. Nia answered. "Director Reynolds." "Nia." The CEO's voice was grave. "I just saw the news. Get to headquarters immediately. We are convening an emergency board meeting at 0800 hours. Your job is on the line." The conference room on the 40th floor of the Sovereign Air Tower in Manhattan was a fortress of glass and mahogany. It offered a stunning view of the city, but the mood inside was suffocating. 12 people sat around the long table, the board of directors, mostly older men in expensive suits, looking at Nia as if she were a tumor that needed to be excised. At the head of the table sat CEO Richard Sterling, no relation to the first officer, a man who prioritized stock dividends above all else. Nia sat at the far end alone. She had changed into her full dress uniform, double-breasted blazer, gold wings, 4 stripes on her shoulder, and her hat placed precisely on the table in front of her. She had not slept in 24 hours. "Captain Reynolds," Sterling began, his voice echoing in the silent room. "We have reviewed the incident at JFK. While we appreciate your diligence, the board feels that your methods were extreme. Grounding a flagship flight, arresting a senior captain, getting a vice president detained Sovereign Air stock is down 4% this morning. Safety is not convenient, sir," Nia said, her voice steady. "Safety is important." A board member with thick glasses interrupted. "But public perception is vital. You humiliated the airline. Thorne claims this was a misunderstanding, a paperwork error that you blew up to make a name for yourself. He claims you have a vendetta against the old guard." "A vendetta?" Nia opened the folder she had brought with her. "Is that what we're calling grand larceny and reckless endangerment now?" "We have reports," another board member said, sliding a paper across the table. "That you were aggressive with staff, that you impersonated a federal officer, that you are emotionally unstable. We are considering terminating your contract for cause effective immediately to mitigate the PR damage. We will issue a statement saying you overreacted due to stress." Nia looked at the paper. It was a statement from Brenda, the gate agent. Coerced, no doubt. They were framing her. They were going to fire her, blame the confusion on her, and quietly bail out Thorne and Vance to keep the smuggling ring and the profits hidden. It was a cover-up. Nia stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Sit down, Captain," Sterling commanded. "No," Nia said. She didn't shout. She projected. "I will not sit down, and I will not be the scapegoat for your corruption." She picked up a small flash drive from the table and held it up. "What is that?" Sterling asked. "This," Nia said, "is the flight data recorder download from Flight 492's previous 20 legs, and the fuel purchase logs for the entire Atlantic region, for the last year." The room went silent. "I spent the night analyzing the data with the FBI." Naya lied. She hadn't done it with the FBI yet. She had done it with her old flight instructor, a math genius. But they didn't need to know that. "Do you know what I found?" She walked toward the head of the table. "I found a pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Flight 492 burns 15% more fuel than physics allows for the manifested weight. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Marcus Thorne signs an override for priority cargo that is sealed by customs." She slammed the folder down in front of Sterling. "I calculated the fuel cost overage. You've been bleeding $3 million a year in excess jet fuel just to carry this contraband. But that's not the worst part." Naya leaned in, looking Sterling dead in the eye. "I also pulled the maintenance logs. The landing gear struts on 3 of your 707s are showing microfractures consistent with repeated overweight landings. Structural failure was imminent. If I hadn't grounded that plane last night, the landing gear would likely have collapsed upon arrival in London. The fuel tanks would have ruptured. The plane would have burned with 300 people inside." She paused, letting the image sink in. "Mr. CEO, you are worried about a 4% stock drop. Imagine what happens to your stock when a sovereign air jet leaves a crater in Heathrow. Imagine the lawsuits. Imagine the prison time for corporate negligence." Sterling picked up the folder. His hands were shaking. He read the summary. He saw the undeniable math. "Thorne," Sterling whispered. "He told me the fuel costs were due to aging engines." "He lied," Nia said. "He was using your planes to run a smuggling empire, and he was compromising the structural integrity of your fleet to do it. Vance was his pilot. Thorne was the architect. And if you fire me today, I walk out of here and go straight to the New York Times with this flash drive. I will tell them that the board knew about the structural damage and chose to ignore it to save face." The room was deathly quiet. The board members looked at each other, panic setting in. They weren't gangsters. They were cowards. They realized Thorne had exposed them to massive liability. Sterling looked up at Naya. The arrogance was gone. In its place was fear. "What do you want, Captain?" Sterling asked quietly. Nia straightened her jacket. "I want Thorne and Vance fired publicly and stripped of their pensions. I want a full fleet-wide inspection of every aircraft they touched, authorized by me. Want the gate agent Brenda retrained, not fired, she was just scared. And I want a written public apology from this board for questioning my integrity." She paused. "And one more thing. I want the chief pilot position. Permanently." Sterling looked at the board. They nodded one by one. They had no choice. She had them by the throat, and she was the only one who could navigate them through the PR storm that was coming. "Done," Sterling said. "We will issue the press release within the hour. Thorne is no longer associated with the company." Naya nodded. She picked up her hat. "Good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a flight to catch. I promised 300 passengers I would get them to London, and unlike Captain Vance, I keep my promises." She turned and walked out of the boardroom. She didn't look back. The walk back through JFK Terminal 4 felt different this time. 24 hours ago, Nia Reynolds had been an invisible woman, dismissed by gate agents and sneered at by captains. Now, as she walked toward Gate B32, heads turned. The airport rumor mill moved faster than a jet stream. Everyone knew. The rampers, the TSA agents, the flight crews, they all watched her pass with a mix of awe and respect. She was the one who took down the Golden Boy. When she reached the gate, the mood was surprisingly calm. The passengers of Flight 492 had been put up in hotels overnight at Sovereign Air's expense. Another order, Nia had barked at logistics before leaving the airport the night before. Now they were back, refreshed and waiting. As Nia approached the podium, a silence fell over the waiting area. Brenda, the gate agent, looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, likely from crying, terrified she was about to be fired. Nia stopped in front of her. "Good morning, Brenda." "Director..." "Captain," Brenda stammered, looking down. I'm so sorry about yesterday. I should have checked your ID properly. I was just... Captain Vance, he..." "I know," Nia said gently. "Bullying flows downward. You were doing what you thought you had to do to survive. You're not Fouad, Brenda, but from now on, when a woman in a pilot's shirt tells you something, you listen. Deal." Brenda looked up, tears welling again, but this time from relief. "Deal." "Thank you, Captain." Nia picked up the microphone. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Captain Reynolds. I know your holiday travel has been disrupted, and for that I sincerely apologize. We had a significant safety concern that required immediate resolution. That resolution is complete." She looked at the crowd. "The aircraft sitting outside has been inspected 3 times over. It is safe, it is legal, and I will be flying you to London myself. We will be departing in 30 minutes. Thank you for your patience." The applause started slowly, then grew into a roar. It wasn't just polite clapping. It was a release of tension. They trusted her. Nia boarded the plane. In the cockpit, a new first officer was waiting a sharp, professional woman named Sarah, who had been called in from reserve. "Captain Reynolds," Sarah said, extending a hand. "It's an honor. I heard what happened. The union chat boards are on fire. Let's just fly the plane, Sarah." Nia smiled. They pushed back from the gate. As they taxied to the runway, Nia looked out the window. She saw the spot where Vance had been arrested. It was empty now. Sovereign 492 wind 310 at 12 runway 31. "Left cleared for takeoff," the tower controller said. His voice sounded different too. Respectful. "And 492. Thanks for cleaning up the yard, Captain." "Cleared for takeoff, 492, Nia replied. She advanced the throttles. The massive GE-90 engines called to life, a clean, powerful sound, unburdened by illegal weight. The 707 surged forward, eating up the runway. At 160 knots, Nia pulled back on the yoke. The nose lifted, and the great bird defied gravity, climbing steeply into the crisp winter sky. 6 hours later, while they were cruising at 37,000 feet over the Atlantic, the story hit the mainstream news. Down on the ground, the karma that Nia had set in motion was landing with the force of a sledgehammer. CNN, breaking news. Major scandal at Sovereign Air. The footage showed Arthur Vance, not in his pristine uniform, but in a grey hoodie shielding his face with handcuffed hands as he was led out of the Queen's precinct. The headline screamed, "Veteran pilot charged in smuggling ring." But the bigger story was Marcus Thorne. The news showed the smug vice president being shoved into a federal transport van. The report detailed the stolen prototypes, the hazardous batteries, and the millions in damages. Sovereign Air's board had issued a statement throwing both men under the bus, praising Director Reynolds for her heroic vigilance. Vance's reputation was incinerated. His pension was gone. He would spend his retirement not on a golf course in Florida, but in a federal prison cell. He had underestimated the cleaning lady at the gate, and it cost him his life's work. Thorne was facing RICO charges. His assets were frozen. The man who thought he could buy anything couldn't buy his way out of this. Up in the air, Naya didn't know the specifics, and she didn't care. She was watching the sunrise over the curvature of the earth. The sky was a deep, bruising purple, fading into gold. "Top of descent, Captain," Sarah said. "Let's take them home," Naya replied. The landing at Heathrow was butter smooth. As they taxied to the gate, Naya opened the cockpit door. The lead flight attendant, Carol, was waiting with a fresh cup of coffee. "You might want to check your phone." Carol grinned. "You're trending." Naya turned on her phone. Thousands of notifications. That Captain Reynolds was viral. People were sharing the story of the black female pilot who grounded an airline to save lives. She walked out of the jet bridge into the Heathrow terminal. She expected to just go to the hotel and sleep for a week. Instead, she stopped. A group of Sovereign Air pilots and flight attendants who were based in London were waiting at the gate. They weren't there to protest. They were standing in a line, forming a corridor. As Naya walked through, they didn't say a word. They simply saluted. It wasn't a military salute. It was a pilot's salute, a nod of deep professional respect. They knew what she had done. She hadn't just stopped a smuggler. She had restored the honor of the uniform. She had reminded them all that the 4 stripes on their shoulders didn't stand for arrogance or power. They stood for responsibility. Naya Reynolds straightened her blazer, returned the nod, and walked out into the London morning, the chief pilot who had grounded the corruption and cleared the skies. What a ride from being mistaken for the cleaning crew to taking down a corporate smuggling ring. Captain Nia Reynolds proved that true authority isn't about how loud you yell, but how much you respect the responsibility you hold. Vance and Thorne thought they were untouchable because of their titles, but they forgot the most important rule of the sky. Gravity and truth always catch up to you eventually. Naya didn't just save those passengers from a potential disaster. She saved the soul of the airline. If you enjoyed this story of high-altitude justice and instant karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that the truth always wins. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.